Hello, everyone. Good morning. Good morning to everybody who is in the auditorium, as well as people online. Again, apologies for starting a bit late, but it's great to have you here in the the lush green campus of LTA Mindtree in this fantastic auditorium. My name is Raghavendra Chari, and I'm the Camunda chapter lead for Bangalore. I just started this role like 3 months ago, and it's great to organize an in-person event and also welcome our fantastic speakers from Camunda. I will just set the context and then I'll show you the agenda briefly, and then I'll hand it over to the folks here, because we are here to listen from the horse's mouth, as they say, right? So adoption of technology has skyrocketed in the last 3 years. We are all familiar with technology since we live and breathe technology. But if you look at the outside world, the consumption of technology was like picking up after 2015, 2018, I would say. But COVID was that turning point where everybody will then talk about before COVID and after COVID, right? And some of the changes that that were introduced to everybody as society and across the marketplace, right? These changes will be permanent. Technology is not going to go away from our space and our life. The good thing is that governments, enterprises, nonprofit organizations, everybody is looking at, hey, how can we use technology? Because one thing that COVID taught us was technology can be very efficient, when it comes to like spreading knowledge, communication, especially for governments, communication to a wider audience and things like that can be done at a scalable pace, right? And from my perspective, there are some specific underlying technologies that are making things possible. If you look at e-commerce, healthcare, travel, technology is all pervasive. And I want to touch upon 2 or 3 points, and then I will link it back to today's agenda. The first thing is, we're all familiar with databases. In our college days, we used to learn this database, structured data, tables, and read and write operations, and so on. But today, if you look at databases, there are some specialized and customized databases. Like, for example, I don't know how many of you are familiar with LDAP. So LDAP uses a hierarchical database, which is super efficient for authentication, user authentication per se. Again, if you look at analytics and reporting, there are some specialized databases. And traditionally, we have used structured data, but UI and UX applications, they're using more of NoSQL and a little bit of JSON and unstructured data, because that gives a lot of flexibility to both developers as well as people who are managing and administrating the system. And things like low code, basically fits into this overall paradigm. And so if you look at database, it has evolved and it will continue to evolve. And one other aspect, if I can pick up, is data streaming. So a combination of Kafka and Redis, Kafka and RocksDB as a persistent data store, it can potentially perform the same operations that a traditional DB does, like a read operation, a write operation. So in certain use cases, people are trying to see, hey, I already have Kafka. I can do a read-write operation. So probably I don't need an external database. Right? Traditionally, if you look at IT, especially infrastructure, people are familiar with, the traditional tech stack, which is like database, middleware, and UI. So that phenomena is changing. And the other themes that you're all familiar with, like cloud and Kubernetes and so on. More apps are being developed today, keeping cloud and cloud infrastructure in mind, right? And there are so many tools available, whether it is GitHub and CI/CD, and so many other things that you as developers are familiar with. So it is changing the way at which we can build solutions, release solutions, automate a lot of things. I want to tie this back to Camunda because, again, when I took this role of Camunda chapter lead, before that, I was just looking at what is new out there in the market. And when I looked at Camunda version 8, it's entirely different from its pedigree, from the past. It is embracing, distributed server technology. And also it is embracing, events-based orchestration. There's so many non-functional requirements that come into the discussion, when people make decisions about what technology stack I want to go with or I want to invest in. And I'm really fascinated to learn, what Camunda 8 has to offer. I'm still learning every day. So with that, let me just introduce the speakers. We have like Maria Alcantara. She's the community manager for Camunda. And we have Neil, Neil Dehan. Neil is the dev relations team member, and we are great to have you. And we also have other guests. I will let Maria introduce her. And before I hand over, I want to also extend my sincere thanks to LTI Mindtree folks. Arindam Muzumdar, who's heading the low-code apps practice, and also Vinay Hegde, who's leading the sales effort. So thank you so much for my introduction, and I hand over to Maria.
Thank you. Raul? I will. Hey. Oh, my name is Maria Alcantara. My pronouns are she, her. I'm based in Malaga, Spain, but I'm originally from Mexico. So I'm really digging the whole culture here, even the traffic. I'm very used to the traffic. So I'm used to sitting, just waiting around. It's fine. I have over 10 years of supporting developers, mainly in R&D through different roles, supporting Scrum Masters, Project Office, and now as a community manager, where my main goal is to enable, empower, and celebrate community members through our different programs. And that is what I will be telling you about today. I will be telling you about all the programs, all the resources that are available for you to start or continue your journey with Camunda. If at any point during the presentation you have any questions, you want to ask me, you want to ask Niall, just join Slido and just type them there. You can scan it, and if not, I will put that into the chat as well a little bit later on. So yes, you can scan it with your phone. I can see some people here just like very subtly taking the phone. It's fine. Now you can take the phone afterwards. If I see you scrolling through Instagram, that might not be so cool, but right now it's fine. Cool, thank you. As I said, Bengaluru, all the cities that we've visited so far, we started in Delhi, then we moved to Pune, then Bengaluru. Traffic, I would not know where to start if they left me in the middle of the city. Like, I would just sit down and wait for someone to come and rescue me, or wander around to God knows who. So that can be the feeling that you might get when you start with Camunda as well. Where do I start? There are so many resources. Web pages can be confusing. You want to get somewhere and you end up somewhere else, just like in any big city. So what I want to do today is precisely tell you about all these resources. And at the end of the presentation that Niall and I will do, I'll share all the links. So there's no more scanning QR codes. You don't need to worry about any of that. One of the main programs that we have in the community are the Meetup programs. And there are awesome chapter leaders just like Raghu around the world. At the moment, 38 chapters that are holding events just like this one around the world. We have over 10 languages. Myself and Niall can only participate in a couple of them. You can only participate in English-speaking ones, Spanish and English, but we'll still working our way through German. But again, life is too short to learn German, so we will stick with what we have. But what I want to say is that you are part of that community already also by being part today here. Another thing that we're very keen on is bringing your voice into our design process. So I would like to do a little hands up round here today. Who is very familiar with BPMN? Good. Who is working with C7? Enterprise Edition? Camunda 7, yeah. Web Modeler, Kawimo, yeah. C8. Oh, Good. That's very good. So what we, and this is the part where I introduce our other colleague, Eugenia. She's a UX researcher. And if you have any feedback that you would like to give us on the terms of what are your pain points, what do you like, what you don't like, or if you want to participate in the research and be part of some interviews with her, just reach out to her during the networking session, or again, if you're online, we'll share the link where you can sign up and participate on an online interview to just, as I said, make your voice heard and give us all the feedback to improve the product. Then we have Camunda Academy, and this is the online resource, free online resource, I want to say, for you to learn Camunda. It's a bite-sized approach, so it's very easy to consume. Each of the courses come with a practical part, which makes it stick even better, right? And the other cool thing is that the team is constantly putting up new things depending on the releases, so you can always stay up to date in a very easy way. If you're a very experienced developer in Camunda or you're starting, the other place that you should definitely visit is the forum. And this is where most technical questions are made and answered either by Camundi or by other community members. This is also a great place for you to connect with people around the world. We have awesome folks that are there in a very continuous way, and they end up sometimes collaborating on talks on different projects, solving things together, and it's a really cool place to hang around from time to time, get to know about releases as well. And if you've never, sorry, that I was jumping ahead to the next slide. This is the one I wanted to tell you about, the how to start guide. So the community hub is the place where the open source contribution of the community takes place. Here you can contribute with any GitHub projects that you have. There are also guides. There are also exercises that you can use, plugins that are maintained by the community. And if you've never participated in an open source place like this one, there is a very good how to start guide that can help you contribute your first piece of code, also in terms of documentation. So it's not only it's not a must to have coding skills to contribute there. Another program that we have is the Camunda Champion Program. And basically champions in Camunda are folks that are very, very active. They are very generous in terms of time, in terms of their expertise. They go around helping others in the forum. They give talks in Camunda conferences, but also in international conferences like Workflow Analytica and others in the States as well. And this is a program that lasts for a year. And what we try to do for all these people is also to enable them and to give them more resources and tools to even get further, right? We have special sessions between them and, for example, our CTO or Bernd, one of the co-founders. So there are many ways where we try to help their career as well and their expertise. So we just onboarded the 5th cohort, and the next one will be onboarded next year. So you have, if you would like to be part of the program, you have 1 year to like build your knowledge, demonstrate that you are a very active community member, and apply. Then we have the Camunda Educational License Program, which is one of my favorite ones because we get to give license for free. Anyone here has links to a university or recently exit university? I'm seeing some very young faces here. No? No one? Oh my God. Then you have a pact with the devil because you look very young. So, but if you know anyone that is a teacher or you know anyone that is in the university and is taking BPMN classes, you can tell them about this program. the way that we do it is they apply, and what we do is we meet with them, talk about their needs, how they plan to use BPMN, and we give them a license for free for the amount of time that their course lasts, so they can use it in their course. This is also, we also like to help students that are either making research or thesis. So it's those two universes, right? The one-to-many, let's say, in the course, and specific students doing research. And we also have Camunda for Common Good. This is the program where we focus on NGOs and non-profits organizations. And again, if any of you is either in contact with an organization that you think could benefit from this, just let them know. We also give them a license for free. We give consulting hours, a dedicated CSM to meet with them, to assess what is the best way to use Camunda in their organization. And we recently shared one case in CamundaCon last September, which feels like a lifetime ago, but it's only a couple of months ago, which is crazy. And it's Urban Tech Heroes. And this organization operates in the States, and they bring technology to underdeserved kids. Oh, you know it? Yeah. Oh, awesome. Then it was a great presentation. The work that they do is really inspiring, I will say. And just the thought that Camunda was able to help their application process to unburden them from that administration mania and let them focus on where they really, really add value is awesome. So again, if you know anyone, just let them know about this program. And talking about CamundaCon, next year we're gonna have two events, one in Europe and in the usual location, which is Berlin, and somewhere in North America, which we still don't know exactly where, but both events will be also held online. And I like to say that the next year's CamundaCons are gonna be like 2.0, because in a single event, we're also going to have a hackathon. We're also going to have the on-conference events, which is more of a developer vibe that we really, really enjoy from the developer relations team. But we're also going to have the business cases, the use cases, and a lot of implementation journeys from different stakeholders and big players around the world. I almost, ran out of air there. And you can sign up today. You can apply. We are receiving still papers until the end of November. If you want, if you have an interesting topic that you would like to share, we also have some office hours with the developer relations team for you to get some feedback, maybe the angle, maybe fine tune the message where you want to approach it from. So don't be shy, visit our webpage, and if you're interested, apply. And with that, I will pass it to you, Niall.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Oh, look, it's me with a hawk. There's a surprise. Cool. Yes. So the first talk we're doing today is going to be about this. This is the evolution of into event-based orchestration. I'm essentially going to talk a little bit about in what universe Camunda 7 came into existence, why Camunda 8 exists now, and essentially talk about how and why architectures are the way we are today and why we use them. And obviously, this is me in a different way, coat and tie. I have many. My name is Niall. I'm a developer advocate with Camunda. This means that I tend to speak about code better than I write about it. You guys can judge, because I'll be doing some live coding in the second thing, so we'll see how that works. I also have a hawk with me. The hawk's name is Pallavi, and she will be guiding me through this lovely presentation with you. And of course, we need to start with some history. If we're going to talk about the evolution of the services, I need to start, of course, way back to get everyone in the same place. First of all, there was nothing. That's where we're starting. Don't worry, it didn't last long. Eventually, we had dinosaurs. So this, of course, did not help software development at all. This was no use whatsoever. Most software developers were not writing code at this stage. But have no fear, because that solution, a solution that soon came, and dinosaurs were gotten rid of. Great. So developers were thinking, fantastic, everything's out of the way, it's our time to shine. And because a lot of you, as were mentioned, are not out of university quite recently, you may realize the greatest bane of software developers was yet to come, and that is this. This is a monolith, and this is monolithic software architectures. If you're as old as I am, the first things you started to write code on was always a big chunk of code that you wrote in one place, you deployed to a server, and then it ran there. Okay, that was the first version of software probably a lot of us made. And if you're new to software development, maybe this is what we call legacy systems now. The way this basically worked was pretty simple. You all had a hawk, I assume, in your architectural diagrams, and this hawk needed something. And in the monolith, inside it had all the services you needed to get stuff done. This was, at the time, quite useful. You basically had a monolith where you ask it a thing. Inside that monolith, it had everything it needed to respond to say, here's what you need. It worked pretty well. So why are we not still using it? Well, this, again, should come as no surprise to anyone. We're just trying to catch up to modern day. The first thing is scaling was really, really hard. You had a single point where everything happened on. You had limited resources everywhere, isn't it? We had limitations on the amount of requests we could take in, limitations on the number of commits to a database we could handle. It was consistently limiting to scale. Loads of things changed around that time to try and make it a little better, but there was always a limiting factor. One of the biggest issues with these architectures is the updating. If you needed to change any aspect of your monolith, the whole thing had to come down and go back up. Now, the agile software development was not really possible with monolithic software, because the idea is that you want to be able to bring any changes as quickly as possible to your architecture as soon as they're ready. You may remember this system meant that if any system change was needed, you basically had to wait for a whole bunch of changes before it was worth actually updating your whole system. Error handling was hard. Error handling was hard because it always happened internally and almost always required a developer to look in to see what's going on. And so then fast forward a little while after that, and people had the smart idea of breaking up the individual services across the network. Okay. Another downside of the monolithic architecture was the requirement that everybody had to use the same version and of whatever dependencies. They all had to write the same programming language because everything had to communicate in the same way. This broke that up. So what happened here was, if you requested something in a distributed system, it goes to a service. That service may then say, okay, I can't do this entire job myself. I'm going to ask another service for that, and subsequently maybe some more. So this was the beginning of microservice architectures, distributed systems, and there's some key things to know about this and why this is not really used the way I've depicted it here anymore. And that is, these are, when you go across network, failure is a really important thing to consider. And almost all of these systems were transactional. They used a thread to go through everything, and if everything succeeded, you committed back. If you've ever gone and bought stuff or booked a flight or something, and you see when you click buy your ticket or buy your flight, you have that spinny thing saying, wait here, don't refresh the page, that sort of stuff. That's because there's a thread out there on the internet bouncing around, and if you refresh the page, you're going to send a second request, and the whole thing will be ruined. So that's the way those kind of architectures work. They still exist around, but no one builds these anymore because they're still quite limited. The freedom you get from the individual services are great. You can choose your own programming language for that service. You can bring it up and bring it back down if it needs quick repair. Is much easier. These are benefits. The problems are there's still big limiting factors. One of them is, and then let's talk about those. First of all, latency creep. You may remember this big problem. So this is, there is a certain limited number of services you can have in a row before the thread eventually just dies. And that's a bigger problem than you think, because the way that microservices exist and are designed, you're not supposed to know as a microservice how many chains there are ahead of you. You should just call another service to do a thing, and you really shouldn't be aware of what that does and what happens next until it comes back to you, which means you could end up unknowingly calling a service that needs to call 4 or 5 more services. And because it's all in one thread, that could just time out and fail. So that could be very complicated. Again, there was a problem with you still relied on all services to be up, or else everything would fail. A key thing that is not present in this architecture is state midway through a request. That was a bad idea for loads of reasons. If you add state, there's a whole bunch of complications. Having that rollback was really important, but it gave its own issues. One of them was that if you got to a service that was currently down, it didn't matter if every other service in the architecture was up, that request is going to fail. The black box issue came specifically about a black box of the end-to-end process. What is calling what, in what order, under what circumstances? And that particularly got hard the bigger you would tend to build your software stuff. Now, I'm glad that Raghu mentioned Kafka, because I'm going to mention that right now. Because the solution to this was event-based systems that you stick in the middle of your architecture. Now, why did that solve the problem? First of all, Kafka is not transactional. It's event-based. That means that instead of my lovely hawk asking a service directly to do a thing, it sends a message to Kafka, and then something is waiting for that message, and then it's triggered, and then completes, and then it sends another message back for the next service. The fundamental difference here, and the key difference in the previous architectural concept, is at this point we have state. We have the ability to wait between services. If service 2 is down, it doesn't really matter because we have that event waiting for it. Another massive benefit is scaling, actually. When we have the previous example, service 1 needed to know exactly where service 2 was, and it needed to call it, right? That is a huge problem for scaling those individual services. If you want 3 or 4 services in parallel to be doing the same thing, how do you call the next one? It's complicated. This solved that really well by saying, here's an event, whoever's available, pick it up. So not only by adding event-based architectures, and this is relatively modern, I would say most architectures are now using some kind of event bus or some kind of event-oriented component. Kafka is just an example. You might use RabbitMQ, you might use ActiveMQ, something like that. But basically, they all function the same way. They hold state between services, and they allow you to scale. That's it. That we could not do with the previous architecture. So there are, of course, as we are in the modern thing, we're talking about evolution. There are some problems with the current way we do things. And one of them is parallel tasks are hard. That's an example. That's the tip of an iceberg that I'll talk about later. But basically, when you can run 2 things in parallel in Kafka. That's not actually that hard. The hard part is waiting until 2 things have completed before continuing. That's complicated. And that's down to a really interesting thing that I didn't mention about this diagram, and that is who owns the process? Who owns the decision about what happens next? Kafka makes no decisions at all in this. Kafka simply holds messages for other services. Service 1 here needed to know that service 2 is waiting for the message it's sending. That's fine. But the decision on what happens next is made in the services, which if you imagine you have a parallel services, 2 services are running at the same time, when they both finish, I want to continue, who is responsible for checking they're both finished? And who's responsible for error handling if one doesn't work and one does? It's complicated. Not impossible, it's just an additional programming problem. Updates and maintenance is hard. That's partly, mainly updates. Maintenance got a lot easier, but updates are hard because if you want to change the order in which things run, it's actually really difficult because every decision that's being made by those services is happening inside the services and it's written down in a list of events. You need to know what events each service is waiting for. If you want to add an event in between 2 existing ones, you actually need to know a lot about the services either side. And that's important because Kafka doesn't really know that exactly. And it's still a black box, specifically the process aspect. Anyone can create an event in a Kafka, create a topic, and then create an event on that topic, and then say, now you read that topic. There's no principle around visualizing, or at the very least, documenting exactly what is going to be reading from where and what actions you take that are going to trigger things. So that's what we're doing currently. I would say this is how most architectures today tend to be built. At the very beginning, if you're building a distributed system, which I hope you are, if you're building monoliths, I'm very sorry. You're going to have to eventually move in this direction. But distributed systems tend to use event-based components in their architectures to create something like this, because in most cases, this works really well. So let's go back in time again a little bit. Not that far, don't worry. After dinosaurs, after monoliths, because what was happening in a different sphere was people were designing processes and systems just on paper. BPMN 1.0. I know that a whole bunch of you folk already know BPMN, so this won't be I can't see the raised hands from you people, but I assume that you know BPMN as well. So in BPMN 1.0, it was a very nice way of having a diagram that showed how things are connected. Services, user tasks, events that happen. Very, very good. That was in 2004. Then later on, 2013, BPMN 2.0 becomes an ISO standard. It's executable. Key component. You can now design processes that are executable. And what was the first way we used BPMN? And not just us as Camunda, but people in general, architectures. We took a service or a monolith, because that was the time that we deployed to servers, we deployed to Tomcat or Wildfire, something like that, a big Java application. And what we did was we would design a process, okay, that an engine would read, and we would link each of the services to a specific Java class. That's how we started building process engines. There was a whole bunch of them. They're almost all in Java originally. There's a few more now in different languages like Python and JavaScript, but generally speaking, they're all in Java. And their goal was we're embedded within some software to orchestrate what's happening in that software, right? If you've used Camunda 7, you can still do this. You can, they're called Java delegates in Camunda 7. You add your engine as a dependency to a Spring Boot application. You have a bunch of Java classes. You have your model in there, and then you have a decision-making component in your engine. That means you do not have to write those decisions here. A key difference already is that decision-making has a place and ownership, and it's the model you make. So there we go. My Hawk got his response and request. Good job, Hawk. So this is BPMN. This is what Camunda 7 looked like. And Camunda 7, because we were limited by resources, and because it was done, it was the standard at the time, we used transactions because we had a database to store our state, and we had a limited number of commits per second. So we designed the engine so that if you run an instance, it would run as much as possible before committing. So if you started this process, it would do all of that as quickly as possible before committing, because it didn't just stop, which is quite nice. Which meant that this was quite efficient, and it meant that we could complete a process with as fewer commits as possible, run that code, and then have wait states. You get to choose where those wait states are. You can say wait before using this method because it tends to fail or whatever. It's quite nice. So we now have decision making, and we also have an ability to wait at any point and to hold state, which is a really nice benefit within a service. We also have the ability to roll back. Ooh, same slide twice. We also have the ability to roll back, of course. Very handy. Anyone who uses transactional software, it's by far the best thing about it. You can very happily know that if something fails, there's not going to be weird, inconsistent state because of failure. It's all happened in memory and transaction. When it rolls back, it's fine. We can retry it. Very important for thread when running a thread through a system. So let's skip ahead. Now, Camunda 7, and I've been with Camunda since 2014. So Camunda 7 was really, really, really great, very useful, very popular, and it was used entirely for embedding into Java applications. Our entire community was Java developers, and we use it in the same way when I started, up until 2018 probably. And people would come to us with problems. of course. They would say, what were the problems with Camunda 7? What were the things that people asked us to solve, especially in the early days? First was long-running services. Because we're a thread-based system, you saw us run a bunch of services in a row. I have an example I like to tell, which is that we had a customer in London. They were doing media stuff, making advertisements, and one of their services encoded a video. It just encoded some video. It lasted 5 hours. This was a huge problem for them with using Camunda because all the threads then needed to be inexplicably given 5 hours before rolling back, which is just means threads are useless, basically. If anything failed, they would need to wait 5 hours before they could try it again. It was pretty crazy. And then we looked at that, we thought that's okay. We can look into fixing that. We also had the constant problem that wait states are great. I want to wait before I do everything so that I can always retry, catch the error, but they use resources. Wait states are a commit to the database. You only get a certain number of those per second. Adding a lot of wait states to a single process definition meant that if you ran that definition 1,000 times, you have a lot of commits. So it was complicated adding those. And then finally, the database was always the bottleneck for our throughput. It was also a single point of failure too. Camunda 7 has a database. You can scale the engine multiple times, but it always needs to be pointing to the same database. That is the owner of the state. So in 2018, around there, we created probably what I think personally is the most important feature Camunda's ever created, or probably since Camunda 8, which is we created what's called an external task order. And it was originally made to solve the problems of Java developers who had very long-running processes that wanted to run something in their own thread pool. It basically meant that the engine, when it got to a service task, instead of calling a Java class, it would add something to a list of work to be done. And then an external service over network will be waiting for that, pick that work up, do it in its own thread pool with its own resources, and then tell the engine I'm done. Okay, this seems quite simple. What it did for Camunda was we stopped becoming a component within a application. We stopped being a thing you add to your Spring application, and we started seeing more people use Camunda as a component in an architecture. It became much bigger than running Java classes. It became running services. And that happened because of the service, but also our community grew hugely because now over network, you are no longer limited to Java as a language. You can use whatever language you like. You can have a completely polyglot architecture. And this was a good time for that because around this time, that was what people were doing. Use the best language for the service, have a team that's really good on Clojure for some reason, because they love brackets. I don't know, anyone used Clojure before? I tried to read that stuff, it's crazy. And you can use that, that's not a problem, because if that's what suits the job, we can do that. Which is really interesting because we created a feature to solve problems for Java developers using software internally, and we created a new community of people who were using our software completely differently. Okay. So now, this may look slightly familiar. Now people started to use our software like this. A request will be sent to an engine. The engine would then trigger some service externally. That service would come back and it wouldn't, key thing, the difference between the Kafka one is it does not come back with telling the engine what to do next. It tells the engine its state. It says, I've completed what I'm doing. Here's my payload. You decide what happens next. Decision making happens here. State management happens here. It's independently versioned from everything else. And every single microservice has no concept, no need to know about any other one. They can completely change. You can add a new service in between. It wouldn't matter. So this is how Camunda 7 started to be used. And if you have ever used something for something that it wasn't designed for, you're going to have problems. That's just the way it is. We were not designing, back in 2013, we were not designing an architectural component. We were designing a process engine for Java developers to orchestrate classes. And now this happened. It's really interesting. It did solve a huge amount of problems for very specific people, though. Why did people start using Camunda 7 for this? Parallel tasks are simple. Events that you want to wait for across network are easy. You can build them. You can say, if a message comes in during the course of this process, it doesn't matter what service is being run, the engine can handle that. It's really, really good. Updates were way easier because now the services were truly decoupled from what happens between them, which is really nice. Even the Kafka has a very slight connection to them, but to each. But the decision making now happens in the engine. You have version services and a version process at the same time. And also something that I think but deserves a lot more, a lot more. I think, I don't know. See, developers hate when I show them a BPMN model and say this is code. I don't know why. It's just hate. Developers hate pictures. If I say this is a developer tool and I show BPMN, I then have to go and explain a lot. But the visualization and clarity of what you build that is directly executable code is incredibly valuable. And we'll demonstrate that later when we do a live demo, myself and Maria, of Camunda 8. So then inside Camunda, a couple of years ago, maybe 3.5 years ago, our CTO Daniel was looking at what the current state was of Camunda 7 and looking at the incoming requests and noticing that the vast majority of our customers had requests regarding Camunda as a component of an architecture rather than an embedded jar. And he thought, what if we redesigned Camunda from the very beginning, assuming that's what we're supposed to use it for? That's what he thought. So that's where we came up with the idea of rebuilding the engine completely. It's called ZB. It's completely event-based, and it has no database at all. So that was a big bottleneck. That was a bit annoying. No threads, no transactions. It is simply an event-based architecture similar to Kafka, but it makes decisions and it's completely visual. That's the key difference. That's what we brought to it. So this is just an architecture of a few bits and pieces I want to show in this image. If you already know Camunda 7, that's kind of how Camunda 7 works. Less important than this one over here, this is Camunda 8. So what I'm showing here is that's ZB, that's the name of our engine. I'll show that in more detail in a few minutes, but it's important to see what's happening in ZB. When an event happens in ZB, like that's a process starts, an end event has ended, and we've reached a new task, we've reached a sequence flow, anything that happens is an event within the engine. And those events are exported to wherever you want. We have an exporter, you plug in whatever database you like. We use Elasticsearch by default. So all the events go in there, and then all of our front-end applications read from that exported data lake data source, rather than talking to the engine about it. We have a modeler now, web-based modeler, which I'll show later. We have very similar stuff that we had in Camunda 7. We have Optimize, which is the same in both for reporting on existing data. We have Task List, where user tasks can be completed and processes started. And we have Operate, which is the cockpit equivalent, if you know cockpit. They're just redesigned and rebuilt based on a completely different architecture. So I'll show that in more detail. It's easier to demo with than anything else. But I want to show something that I can't demo next, which is inside of ZB, because it is really interesting. Has anyone here had to scale Camunda 7 for some reason? Just had to like create multiple instances of the engine Camunda 7? It's actually a little more complicated than we would like, because the default Camunda 7 is a single engine with a single database. You can't go into production with that. You need at least another instance for failover reasons, right? So you need to run 2 instances of Camunda 7, 2 different servers. One database is fine because you have to use one database. Then you put a load balancer on top of that so that you can send the requests in. And this is something that we expect our customers to do immediately when they use Camunda 7 for production. With ZB, we decided, what if we just built that as part of the engine? All of that is just out of the box. When you start up an instance of ZB, it's not starting up an engine. You're starting up a cluster. By default, inside ZB is 3 brokers. Each broker is an engine, essentially, that understands BPMN and can step through it. If I start a process instance, it goes through the gateway, and then it finds a single broker. If it's a new process, that broker is in charge of that process, and it's the only one that can move the process forward. And it also makes a copy of everything it does on another broker to make sure for failover purposes, so that if it fails, another lead can continue. The cool thing is this is configurable. This is the default configuration. If you want, you can say, give me 6 brokers with a replication factor of 4, if you really want to be very, very safe about it. That's really, really nice. It also now, this has your load balancer already there, that gateway. You can add more gateways as well if you want. Don't need to have a single one. We have as many nodes as you need. You don't need to scale ZP anymore in the same way you did 7. It's actually already there. And again, this is because we're trying to build something from the very beginning where we thought, what do people really need from an orchestrator as part of an architectural component? It's configurable in YAML, so you don't need to touch code for it. But that's something that's hard to demo, so I thought I'd explain it. So we've now talked about how Camunda C8 is completely different to 7. Even if you have used before 2 non-transactional and transactional components in the same architecture, you know it's difficult to make those 2 match up. So how about moving from Camunda 7 to Camunda 8? How does one do that? And it's, first of all, we did a lot of changes. It's not that easy. But it's actually, we've created the last little while, we will in the future, a lot of tools to make it easy. Let's break it down to the 3 things you need to do if you have a C7 instance and you want to C7 process and you want to move to C8. First thing, the model. That's probably the easiest thing to change. We already use BPMN. Right now, we're still missing a couple of symbols. Compensation event is one of them, but we have most symbols and we will have all the symbols. We've changed the expression language from Joule, which is the Java Unified Expression Language, to Feel, the friendly enough expression language, because Feel is a standard created by the OMG for DMN. It's a lot of acronyms, but it basically means the same folks who built BPMN have built a notation that you'll see Maria deal with later that's designed to be very easy to read and quite powerful as well. And next up, business logic. Next most difficult thing. When I say difficult, I just mean that it requires work to do. And that involves abstracting delegates to external tasks if you still use them, but it's actually, and then having those external tasks converted to C8 job workers. There's also some API changes. So if you're using internal API of C7, there could be a problem, but generally we've a good overlap. And then history data, or data of the process. What do you do with running instances in history? That's probably the hardest thing. So I want to talk through the tools that currently exist to make all this very easy. The first thing is the model. We already have a tool that you give it a C7 model and it'll tell you exactly how to convert it. It'll actually convert it for you. It'll convert stuff from Joule to Feel if you want. It'll tell you exactly which symbols are not supported or are supported. It'll flag API calls that are no longer available. It'll tell you exactly how hard it is to migrate that model. So before you even start, you'll have an idea. The next tool we have is a really great, if you use external tasks, this is a new dependency you can add, and it runs in parallel for both C7 and C8. Single service connecting to both services and running in the same way. So that means you can run Camunda 7 and Camunda 8 in parallel before you switch over your business logic. They can still run on both. Okay, and that's quite easy. That can be done for Java delegates. It can be done for external tasks. It's a really nice piece of code. Process data. Let me first of all say, I suggest if you have running instances in Camunda 7 and you're in the middle of migrating, just let them finish. It takes less work, but if you really want to, you can do your best here. We've given a process here that allows you to take an instance from C7, create that instance in C8, delete it from C7. It exists, but it requires a bunch of work. You have to map everything, so it's not difficult if you really desperately want to do that. History data doesn't really need to change. So any finished processes, that just is a straight leave it where it is. It's fine. You can move that into Elasticsearch automatically with Optimize. So that's not difficult. So all the things I just showed you are all free open source to use. Scan that code. It's a GitHub repo. The reason I would suggest, even if stuff you don't, that you think, oh, I wish there was something else, it'll show up there. This is a single location where the Camunda team is putting all the migration tools. Camunda 7 has about about 2 years left probably before we stop supporting it. And between now and then, we expect migration to be much easier with a lot more tooling and a lot more help from you folks. So that's where to find it if you're interested in all the things I just talked about. Cool. And if there's other aspects of migration you're interested in, you can come and chat to me after, or add a question to the Slido thing, and I can discuss that in more detail. So finally, we have now reached present day, obviously. So what is the future of this architecture? I actually spent some time thinking about this. I talked to Maria about it as well a lot. And I think we're pretty confident after some documentary footage we watched that the future is probably going to reflect the past a lot. Specifically, we fully expect dinosaurs to come back, but we fully expect this to be a good thing for developers finally. We feel that I think in the future, we could have the potential of dinosaur-powered process orchestration because nothing runs faster than something being chased by a dinosaur, I feel. So thank you very, very much. I hope that was informative. And yeah, we'll take a break in a minute or two. I want to let you know what you're coming back to. I have a quiz for everybody. If anyone who knows me or has seen an event, I love quizzes. I make quizzes as local as possible. So this is a food quiz specifically about food from around middle of India, South India, because you guys have food everywhere. So we'll see how that goes. So and of course, this quiz, I wouldn't force you to do something without the potential I have right here, smuggled all the way from Germany, chocolate, the greatest gift of all. So the winner of this quiz gets this lovely chocolate that's been in my suitcase for a while, and we'll finally find a home with you. So we'll say in 10 minutes, we'll come back, we'll have a fun little quiz, and then we'll continue. Myself and Maria will do a talk, which is mostly a demo showing Camunda 8, building a process from start to finish, and mostly showing the low code and development experience and the collaboration experience between developers and citizen developers. So thank you very much. Thanks everybody for telling me I'm mute. Back now. Okay, let's move swiftly on. So a lot of people went, this looks like a lot of guessing happened. A lot of people just went right for the middle here. Nobody went for 1410. Okay, so let's see what you're right. Well done, the 8% of people who said 1010. So that's referenced by a historian that I looked up last night. So there we go. There's a fun fact. Next up, which coarse spice mixture typically contains dried chilies, black gram, chickpeas, salt, and sesame seeds? Is it called dynamite, gunpowder, saltpeter, or flash pan? What is this coarse spice mixture called? Oh, people don't really know this one. Below to answer. Will we see more random guesses? Whoa, we did not. We got, so everyone knows what dynamite is, obviously, and no one went for it. Smart, very good. Few people went for flash pan, which is not a thing. So if you're wondering, that's a bit of a muzzle of a gun of some kind, apparently. Saltpeter is another word for gunpowder, but the answer is in fact gunpowder. Well done. 60%. You guys are doing very, very well. Let's see. Question number 4. Which country's national dish is chicken tikka masala? Is it England, Ireland, Scotland, or Wales? The national dish of this country is chicken tikka masala, England, Ireland, Scotland, or Wales? The look of confusion is lovely. Yes, one of them. Okay, looks like we got our answers in. Wow, okay, all over the place. Let's start at the bottom. Wales, 28%. National dish of Wales is cheese on toast. So not as exciting as chicken tikka masala. Scotland, no one went for that. National dish is in fact haggis, which is sheep stomach and stuff. Lovely. Ireland, where I'm from, our national dish is stew and probably potatoes. So that means that 50% of people are correct. England is indeed the national dish is chicken tikka masala, which makes a lot of sense. So there's one more thing to add to the list of things they've taken from you. Okay, next up. This one has no time limit, the next question, and I'll give you a second to read it and you'll understand why. So enjoy this performance. In a flaky embrace, a spiced golden surprise dwells. Folded triangle, savory taste tells it. Crisp golden pastry hides warm within. A savory secret, a culinary win. Spice whispers dance at each crispy bite. A fragrant delight, a taste buds delight. I asked ChatGPT to make me a poem about which one of these. And this is what ChatGPT made. So yeah, which one of these was I asking ChatGPT to write a poem about?
Might be you.
Yeah, I know. Hey, I spent a while Googling triangle-shaped Indian food, okay? So this question had to happen. Okay, got a lot of people who are voted in already. Let's see how easy it is. Not so easy. Well, 76% of people went for 6% bread pakora, which I've never had. Bombay sandwich, which I've never had. Don't know how to pronounce that. It is indeed. Well done, everybody. Very smart at this, most of course. Congrats. And now we'll find out who the real winner is here. The winner online and the chocolate winner. So everyone feeling confident? Hey, that is a no. Okay, let's see. Winner is Rashini here. Yes, well, congrats. Well done. This is impressive. So only one question wrong, and you only took 47 seconds. You knew those very quickly. Which one did you get wrong? Okay, I'm glad I got you with something. Come forth and collect your lovely prize. Smuggled through customs by me. So yes, enjoy. Congratulations. Well done. And okay, second, let's see, very close in second and third. We will find out, is second place here or not? Not?
Online.
No, online. Perfect. Well done, Nandan. You will get something. Maria is in charge of that. Because if I was, who knows what would happen. So yes, thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed the quiz. If anyone thought any of the questions were wrong or inaccurate, I'm sorry, but you're wrong. And that's all I got there. So let's swing over to here to our final presentation for the day. So I mentioned already that we are going to, it's a nice presentation with myself and Maria, of course, and we're actually going to do mostly a live demo. It's mostly going to be building a process, but it's more than just building a process because we're building a process from the perspective of somebody who is focused simply on the coding journey that Camunda provides and someone who is focused purely on the low code automation side, which is Maria. And we're going to go back and forth and show you how to build something from scratch. You've already seen multiple pictures of me, but here's more. And of course, I'm still a senior developer advocate, but as you can see, things for Maria have slightly changed. So,
now I'm a citizen developer because, well, as I said, I started as a community manager, but early this year, I was talking to Niall and I told him, hey, I want to really start to do some stuff on Camunda.
why not?
And he said, why not? Let's give it a try. I think I can teach you. And it was a really interesting journey to go from having zero coding, and I still don't have any coding skills, but going from not knowing anything about Camunda as a product, let's say, to being really able to model and deploy and automate a process, right? And yeah, that's what we'll be showing today.
Exactly. Before we do that, I want to remind people what aspects of Camunda kind of make it important for both collaboration and general usefulness. The first part is BPMN. You folks already know that, but it is fundamentally key to how this works. BPMN is a wonderful standard, but I think a lot is said about BPMN's visualization as being able to share what a process does between analysts and developers, but we're actually not going to use it in that way in this case. In this case, as a developer, I'm not going to look at a BPMN model. I don't care. What BPMN is doing in this particular case is taking away from me code I would normally have to write and having it being executed by an engine instead. That's what BPMN is doing. It's basically reducing my workload. From me, we'll hear from Maria's perspective as well. The engine, of course, is language independent. As I mentioned in the previous talk, I'll be using Java for this. Do we have any Java developers here? I can. Oh, there we go. I can see the eyes of someone who's been coding in Java for a while. Unmistakable horror. We do have Camunda in two different sort of flavors. The one we're using today is the SaaS version we host. If you wanted to go to Camunda.com, you can create a cluster and everything else, and we'll be using that. There's a self-hosted version as well if you wanted to host it locally yourself, but we won't be using it today. I wanted as well, one of the things I did in the previous talk was I talked a lot about Camunda from an architectural perspective, what's capable of on a technical level. I did not mention at all about use cases, you probably noticed. What kinds of things do our customers use Camunda for? I've picked 3 examples here. We have a lot of customers, a lot of different use cases, but these are good examples of different common use cases. The first one here is bank money transfers. If there's a company in Europe, I think they're worldwide actually, called Swift, and they do money transfers. So if you do a transfer with Swift, it goes through Camunda 8. So that is a completely automated process. There is no people involved. It's incredibly fast. It has to be fast. It has to be resilient because it does money transfers, the fundamental thing that keeps everyone paid. So that is one of the most common use cases for 8 is these high throughput, completely service-driven architectures. The next one here is CERN, material management. So CERN is the Center for Nuclear Research in Europe. The acronym is the French equivalent, which is why it doesn't match the acronym I just said. They're the French words for it. So CERN, if you've heard of the Higgs boson particle, CERN found that in Geneva somewhere, and they have a huge campus, more than 80,000 people, which in India is not very much, but in Europe that's actually quite big, and it's on the border of Switzerland and France. The actual campus stretches across both, and that's interesting because one country is in the EU, France, and one is not, Switzerland. And they use nuclear material and a bunch of other very, very hazardous things, and they have to move it from one lab to another lab on the same campus. And actually, that requires international transfer paperwork to be done, even though it's just across campus. And for ages, they were doing all of this by hand. They would need to scan stuff, send it, get it signed. So the exact opposite of money transfers is a completely human orchestrated task that has to be human, that requires humans at every step, still being orchestrated by Camunda. And that's not the only one they do. There's a whole bunch of them they do that are all very human focused. And they basically remove the whole point of emails or downloading documents or posting stuff and just have that all managed on with Camunda, usually using a lot of DMN as well to decide what sort of forms are required, what sort of people are needed, that sort of thing. So it's quite nice. The final one I use specifically because we're here in India, which is NASA also uses Camunda. So if you folks are planning any trips anywhere soon, you guys have recently been to the moon, but I heard that Mars is lovely this time of year. The Mars rover that NASA built uses Camunda to process the images to send them back to Earth, or on Earth to process the images. I'm not sure exactly where the engine physically is. So that's a really useful thing. It also needs to not fail. It needs to hold state. It needs to make sure that it's updatable. And it's a nice story that we have. They've used Camunda for a very long time, since I think well, obviously they haven't updated it in a while. It's been on Mars, but I'm sure they would love to use Camunda 8 if it was possible. So there are use cases, and as I said, we're going to be using Camunda 8 for this demo. We're going to be using this architecture, which you may see, which may be familiar to you, in which case we have a process in the center there, and we have our services. But unlike the previous demo, I want to focus quite a lot on how to practically build this exact architecture and collaborate with the two main personas involved in building this architecture. Me as a software developer who will actually build the service that gets used, and Maria, process expert, who will be designing the BPMN and using the services I provide. Now, for me, the only thing that I want to care about is code. I want to focus in here. I do not care about Maria's process, never have. It's sure it's lovely, but I'm not even going to pay attention to it. The idea here is this persona, along with Pallavi, my hawk, I never code alone, will be just able to build my code, and that's it, and then be able to very easily have Maria use that without me needing to even look at the model that she's using or tell her about any of the code I've built. She shouldn't need to talk to me about what my code does. I should be able to say, here's a service for you to use. It's built, it's running, have fun. That's what I want. I don't want to have to do any communication beyond that. Maria.
I, on the other hand, want to focus only on the model and building the model. And my main focus is on it being understandable by all the other analysts and all the other parts of the company or the organization that I will be working in. And like you, I am not interested in what's happening in the backend. I just want to be able to model it, deploy it, and make it very easy to communicate, as I said, between the different stakeholders. And the key thing here will be how you and I will actually interact. Sometimes we are in the same location like this time, but sometimes we're not. And we'll be showing that also during the demo.
Yeah. So Maria has entered. Good job. So I'm going to now switch now to Maria's machine and
jump up there, like everything.
Sharing.
Sharing.
Flawless.
Voila.
Do it. No.
No.
Oh, you know what?
I am sure.
Sorry, no, you are. It's my fault. Don't worry, I got this.
So glad that it's yours and not mine.
Yeah, there we go.
Good.
That's basically it.
So now I'm in the modular part of C8, as Niall said. And what I want to do is, obviously the first thing is I want to build something, right? And this time what I want to build is a model that will help me to decide and help us to decide what we're going to be doing in the evenings and the afternoons. And because we are so tired sometimes and so worn out, sometimes we have jet lag, sometimes we had probably way too much food, so we need some help to decide what to do. So I'll be using this API, which is called Board API, and it will give me every time something new to do. But I want to build, as I said, a model for it. I'm gonna steal this because it will make it easier for me. So now I just simply go to new project, and I will, so that I know exactly which one I am in, I'll create a new file, a BPMN diagram. I'm in the implementation section, and as you can see, it already tells me no one likes it better than to be told what you're doing wrong from the very beginning. So you have here all the problems that your model already has, and I'll start by saying we need a plan. And as you can see, as soon as I add the description, the problems start to go down. So I'm gonna just close this to make it easier for everyone to see. And I'm gonna add the first task, which is a REST API task, which is for sure one of the things that you use the most, because it's what you use that to communicate with third parties, with external services. So it's one of the most used ones. And again, one of the nice things, good practice. Suggest activity from the Board API, and I will call the process through, so we know exactly what we'll be looking for. And I didn't.
Yeah.
Just activity happens. Okay, now another cool thing is, as a citizen developer, I already know where to focus and what is the really important parts that I need to look after. And in this case is the URL that I have it already here. Well, very handy. I will add it. And I already know that I will need something to retrieve the information that I want. And this is where the field expressions come in. And as you know, this, as Niall said, this is the language that was originally designed for business analysts or citizen developers to actually be able to communicate with developers, but most importantly for us to be able to indicate what we want from the service. So I have it here also already. And this pop-up is something new, which is something that I really, really like, because before you just had a very long line and it was very hard to follow. Now you can simply see it like that. Here it's completed. Once I get that activity, I will add a user task so I can check actually the activity. So check activity. And to be able to check that activity, I will create a form. So from here, it's very easy to jump and create a new form. Another cool feature is that the name of the form is already there. So you don't have then 5 forms that are called new form, and you have to guess which is the one that you actually want to embed, which has happened to me way too many times. So I will add a text area. It is. And the key is gonna be something very creative like activity. And I'll add a checkbox to say if we like it or not, because sometimes this has very weird activities that suggests, and it's like activity B. And with that, I go back to my BPMN diagram and simply embed it. Another nice feature is that you can preview the form that you just attached. So if you need to review something while you're building something more complex, you can see it. And I'm gonna add an X gateway for practices and stuff that will actually tell me, it will allow me to decide if we like it or not. So the question is here, do we like it? And if yes, we have a plan. This will be yes. And the condition is, as you can see, I already have a variable suggestion here because I added the form, which will be like activity equals true. And if we don't like it, which might be the case, I will just go back to the beginning. No, and I'll make this default flow, so I don't have to define. Good. So, looking good? Looking good?
Did you name it? I think you did, right?
I think I did, yes.
No problems. Zero. See the bottom line?
0 problems.
Yeah, there we go. Sweet.
Yes, I did name
You
it,
did
no?
it. You did it.
Yeah. Okay, so now I'm gonna deploy it in my very nice alien cluster, and I did. Box me. Gonna run it. Gonna go to see how the process instance is being handled. So that's it. Dates. It happens all the time. Could be worse. Last time we were running on a hotspot, so this should be going better. Oh, and we're already here that we need to go and check the activity. So I will open the task list where I can claim that task for myself and check what we'll be doing this evening. Let's hope it's not arranging our drawers like last time, which was not a very nice one. Oh, learn how to French braid hair. Good. We'll be able to do it as well. So we like it. We'll do a French braiding hair session. We're going to complete the task, go back to operate, and check that it's actually over. And voila, it's done. So far, so good. I think that we can still do more things. To be honest, if we're going to be doing this for our plan here in Bengaluru, we should be able to translate it to the local language, which is Canada, if I'm not wrong, with a K, not double N, not the country. Good to know, exactly. So what I'll do is, again, I will move this a little bit more so I have space. Why I cannot do it? I'm gonna drop here, and I want to translate text. And I will browse through the list of connectors that are listed here. So connectors are basically microservices with a very specific context. As you can see, there are many that are being used very often. And since there are so many of them, I will just struggle with the zoom of my computer and look for them because I can't. Oh my God.
Zoom in.
Yeah, it's too big. There we go. So we're gonna look for translate, and there is nothing that will help me to translate. And this is where the collaboration begins. But before the collaboration begins, I will create a milestone, which will save everything what I've done so far. So I will call this before asking Niall for help, just in case. Once that I've done that, and again, let's, for the sake of this presentation, pretend that Niall is not standing here. So, because that is sometimes what happens, right? Process designers, business analysts sit somewhere else than the actual developers. So what I will do is I will add Niall to my organization, to the process I'm building. You have been invited. I will send the invitation. Go back to my BPMN diagram. And I will say, Niall Behan, can you please create a translation connector for me? Please. And with that, I will let Niall do his thing.
Indeed.
Stop sharing. We'll stop sharing.
Let's see how seamless this is. Funky. So now content sharing is ended. Marvelous. So undo there. Screen. Cool. Great. So just go away, please. So what am I going to do next? So as I said, Maria's asked me to do this thing. So what are my options if I want to build a service for Camunda? How do I get rid of this annoying thing? I'm sure it'll go away eventually. The first thing is that I can build a connector from an existing template. What that means is I can take an existing microservice that already runs, and I can just tinker with it to make it easier to use, to make it more clear for the user. That's really good. Reusable code is important. But if I definitely have no idea that I can use an existing connector as a base, I can also use Camunda's own SDK. So this basically lets you build connectors from an API level. And what that would mean would be I would, most of us here are Java folk, so I would build a Spring Boot application, I would add a dependency, and I would add some annotations that use the SDK to connect to the server. The rest is just regular code. We then create a template. That's the key thing. The template is a JSON description of how the properties panel should look for this connector, so that Maria knows exactly what's required from this. We then publish that connector to her workspace. And then next, when Maria goes to her model, she simply sees that in the list of services. So that's really tiny. So let's talk about how the connector looks. This is a simple Spring Boot application, and I want to just show the things that are different, right? The first one is this is a simple Spring Boot application with this annotation saying outbound connector. This is a key addition. And what you need to do is here, 3 things I've added. The first is the name of this connector, so that you can have a log on Camunda's side to let you know what type of connector picked the job up. The second one, which if you want, is input variables. The reason you want that is because it's for validation rather than a requirement. So if you want, you can just take all the variables, but this means that if the variables aren't valid, there's an error that'll show up in Camunda to tell you there's some variable issue here, we couldn't run the connector. And then finally, we have the type, which is make now do work. So the type is you can think about it as the name of the topic we're subscribing to, right? It's the name of the event that'll be fired to do it. So once I've written that, the rest is pretty boilerplate. I would then just have an execution method where I would put my business logic here, so whatever I want. Usually you wouldn't put it directly in here, but you would call your class, which should be independently versioned and kept separate from these proprietary annotations, but it would still just run regular Java. And in the end, you just need to return back saying, as I mentioned at the beginning, here is what happened. Something went wrong, everything went great, here are the variables. You basically return back saying, here's the stats. So that's how it will connect. The second thing to add, of course, is the location of the place we're trying to connect to. Where's the server located? This is really easy. You can go to Camunda and just generate a API key for your worker, and you just put it in your application YAML. That's basically it, and it does the connection. And from there on, you can see here that I actually even gives you the YAML, actually, depending on the type of service you're using. You copy it, you paste it in there, and you can see that I have a region, which in this case is Brussels. Should probably change that. We have a cluster ID, right, where exactly the engine is hiding. We also have a client ID, which is just for this worker. So it you can track the authentication, and we also have, of course, the client secret. Once you start that up, that'll basically point at it and do the work, right? And this is probably a way you would do things if you're a developer. But if you're like me and a developer advocate, you're a lazy developer. So let's talk about the other thing, the other way we can do this, which is the protocol version. Picking a protocol you want to use, right? So with Maria, she's chosen to make me do a translation app. I don't know how to code a translation thing, so I'm going to try and build on what we have. So I basically need to pick a protocol, pick something that I think can call a service that does the translation, add the criteria to the template to make it work, publish it, and then once again, Maria will just see it show up. The way it works is we've already seen Maria using this REST template, right? What is this? This is a microservice. Every single one of those connectors is a microservice that is currently running, that is subscribed to a specific topic that is doing the work. The REST connector is what we call a protocol connector. It's the lowest level connector. It does a REST call. There's ones for database access, GraphQL connector, bunch of other stuff that may exist. You can start with those if you want to build a new one. So what would I do with that? Well, what I can do with that is I can say, well, I want to build a Twilio connector with that. Twilio has a REST API, so I'll add the REST API, tinker with the form, and then I'll have a connector there. But let's say we don't even need a brand name. You can even then build on top of that and say, let's make it as easy as possible. Let's have just a send SMS thing. Behind the scenes, and this is really important, there is exactly one microservice running doing all of this, because it's just making a REST call and we just have a definition for it. I'm going to build one of these just now in a few minutes, so you'll see how easy it is. So let's do that. Let's hope that I really would love this need to go away. There we go. Okay, so Maria has already very kindly given me access to this. Let's take a look at the model. For those who are wondering from online, I took my hair down in preparation for the French braids that Maria has promised. So I see here that I should have, if I go to design, I have the message Maria left for me. So that's great. I'll come back to that in a moment. Now I'm going to build my translation connector. So Maria's REST call was really simple, had no authentication required and that sort of thing, but this is going to be more complicated. So translation tester. Okay, so the first thing I would do is I would simply build a translate text. Okay, and like all good developers, I am going to decide to use OpenAI because it does everything. So let's take a look at what the implementation requires. So my OpenAI thing is going to, first of all, require a key. That's really important. So they're going to say secrets.openAI. So this is really important because we have a secrets vault that you're supposed to use with Camunda, because you don't want anything in the model that could potentially be used or visible during network communication. So the secrets vault exists. So I already have a key in the vault. That's how to access it. Next up, what do I need? I don't know what any of this stuff does, but I do need a prompt. And that prompt is going to be in field. I'm just going to say, how can I, oh, sorry, I'm going to say, can you please translate, always say please to AI people, they're listening. Yes, true, text into line. So can you, whatever text I have, can you please translate it into this language? Pretty easy. So I'll leave that there. And then finally, I need a response. Now, I need to use this because it is a pain to get a response back from JSON. So those of you who are wondering, the response is here. And I'm going to change it to this. This is some feel. I want to quickly, for those who use Camunda 7 currently, okay, if you have had to deal with parsing JSON objects that return back from REST call, this is way easier. This is field. It's saying, here's the variable, OpenAI answer. Give me the response, the body, choices. Give me the first element of choices, and give me the message in that content. Put it into a variable. Done. In Camunda 8, a huge change a massive change for developers is that JSON is now the default way in which all data is put through the process. Way easier to manipulate, and feel is actually particularly good. It does have some weird stuff there. That number 1 there on the array, that's the first element, not 0. So if you threw a 0 in there, it'll just break. Because this is designed for people like Maria, who count starting on 1, not with 0. We're all different.
God intended.
Yeah, exactly, like God intended. So that's what I'm going to be doing. So this looks pretty good. Let's give us a name. Translation Bengaluru test. Good name. I'm just going to deploy this just to see if it works. I'm going to run it. Now, because I don't have any front end or anything, I'm just going to add in my variables. Text. Hello, how are you? And I need another variable, which is going to be lang, and that's going to be Canada. Is that spelled correctly? Amazing, look at me go. Okay, I'm gonna run this. So I'm basically sending in that JSON object to start my process. Let's see how it goes. Why is the thing being incredibly annoying? Okay, there we go. So that's my food stuff from earlier. I did research all that myself. So now I'm going to go into operate. And I'm going to find my instance, and I'm going to check it out because I missed the pop-up. Yeah, it's already finished. That's your one, right?
That's mine.
Translation, test 1, no translation.
You should name it.
Yeah, there it is. Got it. Okay, so there it is. There is my translation. I just need to check to see if this is accurate. Let's just copy that. Let's just zoom in, actually. Like, that didn't work. Okay. Can I see that to verify if that's correct? Yeah, we're good. Okay, so now I'm confident. I've done all my testing required, that I can give this to Maria now to make sure that she's going to be able to do her work. So how do I do that? I have now created essentially what Maria wants, but there's a whole bunch of stuff in there that I don't want Maria to do because it's very, very open, and she'll know that I didn't code a single thing and it's all ChatGPT. I want to pretend like I did a lot of work. That way I can charge more. So I will save as. Save as creates a brand new copy of what you've just added in there. So all the parameters you've added will be saved. So that's a good start. So I'm going to call it Niles Cool Translation App. And it's going to be called Premium App for Translation. Okay, so that's the first thing. So now I've copied what that is, and it's created for me a template, the code for that template, which is what we'll see here. So on the left is the JSON, which will appear in a second. Great. On the right is the template that exists, right? So this is the direct representation of this. What's that? Oh, that one there?
Yes.
Oh yeah, sorry folks. There's actually 2 screens for those wondering why I'm pointing away from the screen. I know it's kind of weird. Okay, so first things first, there are exactly 3 things you need to do to turn this into something that is really, really usable and really, really good. The first thing is I'm going to get rid of everything there that doesn't produce a variable I need. Okay, for instance, I have there organization. It's blank. I don't need it. I don't know what it does. So I'm just going to find the template for that. There's organization. There's the details of it. I'm just going to say bye-bye. That's gone. Okay, so don't need it. That's going to confuse people. What you do is you remove all the parts of the template that aren't producing any value that you need to send to the call. Okay, part 2. The stuff that you do need to send, like for instance, I do need to send the operation chat, I need to send the model, but I don't want Maria seeing it or changing it in any way, right? So what do we do with that? Let's go and look for model. And the model here, as you can see, is a drop down. I'm going to change that to hidden. And that then disappears. It's still being populated behind the scenes, but Maria can't see that at all. Third thing, great, I can count to 3. Third thing is I need to add things to make it easier for Maria to be able to use this. I need additions, right? The first thing is that this needs two inputs. It needs a language and it needs a text, right? So I need to give some obvious input that that's what's required here. And I'll just open up this. I'll just grab this one here. Okay. So what I do is I'm just going to add this and then talk through exactly what I'm adding. So I'm going to put that in there. And because I've forgotten a bracket, everything breaks. Let's see. That's fine. Did I copy it badly? I did. Didn't even missed a whole bunch. How did you guys not spot that? Come on. I can't be doing all the work here. Okay, so what I've added is this has just appeared. How did I make that appear? I said, okay, label is going to be this, the type is going to be text, it's going to be an input, and there's the default value. You can see the default value is a field expression called text to translate, and that's a variable. And the next thing, which is the most important thing, is I then internally, see the binding section? I internally bind that to a local variable that Maria can't see called text. Because whatever she puts in there, because the name of Maria's variable is activity, not text to translate. So I want her to be able to type in activity in there or whatever, and then bind that to whatever local variable I'm using to do the work. So that's super cool. So that's what I'm doing here. And I also can have constraints, like this can't be empty. Because I want absolutely no way that this could easily fail, because as wonderful as Maria is, I want to make sure it's a very pleasant experience for her to use the stuff that I make. So following those three things, removing the stuff that is not producing variables, hiding the things that you don't need to show people, and adding input variables or output variables or whatever additional context you need, I'm going to show you what it looks like in the end by selecting a whole bunch of text. There's more than I thought. Okay, get rid of it. Great, it's empty. Okay, and this is what I end up with. I have the text translate, language, API key, and then importantly, the very complicated JSON thing that I don't want Maria have to mess around with, but it's visible here, so she knows the output. The important field is complicated. Being able to create a field expression within this is really important. That's someone else's work that you can then reuse for complicated parsing. So that's what I've done here. And the final thing, there is, as I said, one of my main goals here is, why is that being all weird? Okay. One of my main goals, of course, is to ensure that Maria has no idea that this is just me using ChatGPT. And sadly, there's a dead giveaway here. The icon is still there, which is very annoying. So in order to solve that problem, do this. I'm now going to have Niall's own cool icon, TM, and I'm going to publish this first version, best version, also the only version. So, okay, that's published. What does it mean to publish? Well, we'll find out. I can now go back to the our lovely app here, or the Maria's cool thing, and I'm just going to go back to the design section. I'm going to say, Maria, this is done. It's great. Okay, here we go. Okay, and now I'm going to stop sharing.
Yep. So I will
Start sharing. This is getting better. We're getting faster at this.
Okay, so I get the text that this has been done. It's great. So now I can simply go again into the the task,
1 second.
which is still not being shared.
I'm working on it.
You're working on it?
Okay.
Okay. So I'll make this a little bit bigger. And now I can, if I and here it is, Niall's Cool Translation app, which is great. I have no idea that you use ChatGPT to do everything. And what I want to do now is, because doesn't make sense to have this translated but not have it with us. So I'm gonna be sending it to our emails. And unlike Niall, we need to collect this information, right? So while you were busy doing that, I created a form that will be added as a front end when we deploy this process. So I will say it's the initial form. I already know I need to collect some information like the name, the email, the language that I wanted to be translated to. So it's already there. And with that information, I can already say that the text to translate, it's gonna be activity, and it's already suggested. And the language to translate, I know that I added language as the variable. And the next thing is I want to send the information by email. Info by email. And I'll do exactly the same thing. I will simply look for, oh, why is this?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Just not clear. Yeah.
Okay, now it's fine. So, and I will again consume because this is not what I want. And I will put send email, and I can already find it here, the send grid output connector. Like Niall, I have my keys very well kept, very handy. We're gonna fill it in with the name. We'll use community, email address. If you have any questions about whatever we've shown, you can use this email. It's functioning, I swear to God. And the name of the receiver, it's gonna be the name that I'm already collecting in the initial form, the email as well. Here is a variable. Subject is thing to your time, and the body will be the translated text. And probably I will have problems.
Did you change the code again?
Probably not.
Into the bullet.
So I will add this, and what I'll do already in advance, I will put a space. And in this link that I'm gonna be adding, because we want you to try it afterwards in a little while, is the links of all the things that we've shared so far. So everything looks good. Yeah, good. And with that, we will try it again. So let's see. So our, this, run it. And here our front end should at some point. Yep, I'm gonna use yours, Niall. So everyone can write. Niall, span him, send him anything you want. And language, like English, we're not gonna use English. What do you want me to translate?
Irish.
Irish, let's see. But you need to pronounce it afterwards.
Not bad.
Good. I'm gonna go and check the process instances again. See? It's already there. Check the activity. Good. Let's see what we'll have to do today. Organize a bookshelf. Why not?
A lot of books.
With you? Well, yes, we bought
Yeah.
books. Yeah, we already booked. That's the first thing we did, buying books. Not the best choice when you're traveling around. So now if you go and hopefully check your email, we'll be able to see if, as long as it moves, of course. If not, we'll do live. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now, we want you to be able to test this as well, and we want to show you other cool stuff that you can do with C8. So before you do that, Niall, because I know you will break everything and change everything. So before Niall is everything.
See if you got the email.
Need to check your emails. Yeah.
Email.
But you need to say it in Irish.
I'm not translating that.
Good. So because we want you to be able to, oh no, you're gonna change everything, right?
Yes, exactly. So the final thing I want to do is do what any good developer will do and then make this process far more efficient and also more usable. One of the nice things is that this is a wonderful process. If you have access to the modeler, you can start it, which is handy, but not everyone does. So I'm going to make this process both very efficient and more available to everybody. So I'm going to start by having you stop sharing. Great, now I shall share my screen. Okay, so here we are in Maria's model. As you can see, everything that Maria did changed while I had this thing open. And now let's just delete a bunch of stuff. So don't need this, don't want that, no need for that anymore. Let's put this down to just 3 simple things. So you have an input, you get your suggestion, we translate it, and you get an email. That sounds perfectly fine. But how would I allow this? Yeah, chunk simulation. Woo! I just want to do this because it's fun. Yay! Okay, that's enough. So how will I make this? Well, first of all, we have here this public access thing. What that does is it allows the front end I created to be deployed somewhere where if I give someone a link, they can directly access it. So if I deploy this now, there we go. We then go to publication, and here it'll generate a link that brings us to the front end that Maria built. There it is. So if I go here, you'll probably be able to see the front end. Great. And of course, for you lovely people, I want to make it even easier. And since I know you already use QR codes, I'll put this in the chat actually. There we go. Should be able to scan this in the chat. I will put the link directly since it's probably easier. And yeah, go ahead, see if you can. It's exactly the wrong time for you to show up. Okay, I'll leave that there for you to scan and see if it works. See what kind of activities you might get to do. While you're doing that, I can quickly scoop into the dashboard here and see how many instances.
Using the marketing slide on it.
Yep. We are in Bengaluru. 2 instances started. Whoa, loads now. We have 3 instances have started. That's good. Let's see how they're doing. Already sending emails. That's nice. How many have finished? Wow. Whoa. Okay. So a lot of stuff is already happening, which is great. This is not the right place to see exactly what's happening. So let's open up Optimize. Optimize has already been running the whole time. When you start at Camunda 8, you get task list, operate, and optimize. So let's take a look at how this report looks. Bengaluru. Let's first of all go here. Okay, let's see the durations. So if I open this up, so far this takes about 1 second. Chat GPT, Niall's cool translation app takes about 5 seconds, and we have here this takes about 1 second. We can also take a look at maybe what the duration is overall. 10 seconds on average to do that, but let's maybe tinker with that a little bit. We can set a target. Maybe we want this to take 2 seconds, in which case we're doing great. And maybe we also want to show the number of instances. Let's see, looks good. Maybe we want to see the count, number of instances. There are 18 so far, that's a lot. And you know what? Let's group them by variable, because we also have all the variables that were added into the process. So if we go and look at, let's say, activity, we then have a list of all the activities that people have been asked to do. No one's been asked to do the same thing twice, so the API seems to work. Some of these things include, huh? Oh yeah, it's a good idea. Let's see what language. It's a great idea. There's language. Okay, it's all over the place. We have some Tamil, which is nearby, Canada, English, never heard of it. We have French, Telugu. Where's that from? Another language? Oh, from your, okay, cool. Hindi, Irish, I remember that one. So yeah, so we get to see, and let's do a pie chart because that's nicer. There we go. So now we can see. Cool. So this is quite a nice and fun little thing to do around that. Let's see what the final couple of slides are. Not that one, this one. There we go. And then we'll go into some questions. Great. So connectors, it's important to know, are inbound and outbound. I only did outbound connectors during this, which means it always just pokes a service to do it. A service always needs to be triggered by it. But you can also build inbound connectors, which is inbound connectors, which are ones in which the engine itself triggers an external process or waits for some triggering from external processes. An example is a webhook inbound connector. So that means that you can create a URL at a certain point in your process that can then trigger it to continue or something like that. The whole point of them. I use them for Kafka a lot. So both waiting for a topic and producing a topic, you can use inbound and outbound connectors. So one of the things I didn't show you was the eagle-eyed people might have seen when Maria typed in the translate thing and nothing showed up. A link showed up for this. This is the marketplace where anyone can build and deploy their connectors for everyone to use. It's running right now. We have a link to it somewhere, marketplace.camunda.com, and that's where people can build connectors. The ones that Maria scrolled through briefly are just the default ones. Anyone can build, upload, and share the connectors they build here in the marketplace, and you can also download them locally into your own infrastructure if you want to use those. So we hope to this has only been active for about 2 months already. We always see a lot of stuff. So I might just show you how easy it is actually. So if I go back here and I look for my favorite Space Trader. Oh no, there's no Space Traders API. Okay, so let's see. Space Traders doesn't exist. So I'll click on the marketplace. This will load it up. I will take a look for Space Traders. There it is, my Space Traders game. I'll click download to project. It's downloading the connector. It's now been published. Yeah, Space Traders is available. There it is. That's how quickly you can get a connector that's been published already into your project. And you can see that this is a lot of stuff. There's the connector. You can see that it's pretty cool. So yeah, that's I think the fundamentals we wanted to show. We have another slide. I think I have one more. If you want to build anything and you don't have an account, you can go ahead and follow that link and you can create a C8 account. Everything I showed is on the SaaS version. As I mentioned at the beginning, you can also use the on-prem version if you want to do, but I would say start with this because it's really easy to get going with C8 by testing out the features in a place where it's free and you don't need to start setting up anything. I should mention, while C8 is a lot better than C7 in lots of ways, it's much harder to set up. It's way more distributed and it requires like probably Docker at the very least, but Kubernetes probably for proper setup. We do give you the Helm charts and all the stuff pre-configured, so there's a lot we give you, but it is harder than C7, which you just added as a dependency to a project and just spun up. But it's that's why the SaaS version exists. Thank you very, very much for listening to myself and Maria. Greatly appreciate it. And yeah, we'll take your questions in a moment. Thanks so much.
So there's someone online that just asked us how to use Milestone. So I want to show it.
Which
first? No, I would like to go to another one.
Oh yeah, no, show the question first.
That's a very general question that we can show up.
Yep.
So you saw me creating Milestone. So you can go here to the Milestone history and see the changes highlighted. So this is before asking Niall's help. Then when the connector was ready, you can see also here the changes, and then the latest version. So this is what milestones are for. It's like a versioning system. So you can see exactly what you've been changing along the way. So I hope, Nandan, that helped. And we have more questions that, oh, here they are.
Okay, so the first one was milestones, which is where. Okay.
Yeah.
Why are we calling the protocol connector, whereas only using REST protocol only connect underlying available APIs? What?
Why are we connect?
Yeah, so I posted it. So the connector which we are calling for the secondary is protocol connector, right?
Yes.
But protocol is more like REST and the others.
Yeah.
So when we are using protocol connector, we are always connecting to a REST API, right?
No, because there's multiple protocols that exist and that we use. For instance, there's a GraphQL connector that doesn't use REST at all. There's a gRPC connector, doesn't use REST at all. And there's also other sort of weird ones, like database access it can be sometimes proprietary. So the protocol connectors actually are wider than REST. REST simply is the most universal one that most things are based on, but protocol connectors are bigger than that.
Okay.
Well, thank you. If you do have questions, online folk or people here, you can just talk to me. But online folks, just add them here, and I'll do that. I'll quickly ask if any folks here like to raise their hand and ask me a thing. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So the question was about Camunda 8 and the process variable length and Elasticsearch. So the first thing is, let me clarify what Elasticsearch is. Elasticsearch is not something that the engine reads. It doesn't hold state. It's not a source of truth for state. It's simply the output of all the things that happened in the engine. There is a variable limit. I think it's about 5 megabytes of JSON per request at the moment that can go in, which is so far has proven to be enough. There is ways of changing that. That's the default setting, and this is what we do almost all of our testing on. So if you're sending a request to the model, I think 4 or 5 megabytes of JSON, I think, is the biggest you can have. That's the limit. If you increase that, you can, but we're not sure how slow the engine might become after that. But actually, Elastic has nothing to do necessarily with it. I should also mention that Elastic isn't required. You can start up ZB and never export the data out to anywhere else. It can just be run itself. Thanks for the question. Does that answer it? Great, thank you. Yes.
This point, the 7, somebody who uses like the 7.
Yeah.
What the sentiment around 7 getting moved to 8? Have you done connect successfully for some of them? Or
lots. Yeah, we have actually. So before we released most information to the public or released Camunda 8 to the public, we did a lot of work with some of our biggest customers on C7 to find out what the migration path looked like in reality. And actually, we had a bunch of successful enterprise complete migrations from 7 to 8 already. And actually, at CamundaCon this year, which is in May, which is remote and in person, there's at least one talk that will probably be accepted from a customer who will talk about exactly the process that they went through and show the before and after. So that'll be quite useful. I'm talking specifically about complicated ones, not easy migrations. These are ones where they use Java delegates. Like, this is the hardest migration. They're the most interesting ones to hear about. So that's probably what you'll hear about. But yeah, we have. I think at the moment, it's harder for a community member, I must admit, because with consulting, it's a lot easier, honestly, because we've done it before and because it's so new to do that. But our aim is to make all the tools and documentation. We have a huge detailed document on how to actually do the migration on the doc. We want people to be able to do this very easily. We don't want to be having people feel they're stuck on 7 without the required stuff. Everything will be open for migration that we can make.
I think that 2 years down the line, we are going to support Camunda 7.
Correct.
Do we still stand at that, or we are changing mind considering things we need to do for time?
Sure. So the question was about support for Camunda 7 and when it ends, and it'll end in 2025, which is, or 26, kind of 2 years from now, whenever that is. I don't know what year I'm in. Anyway, what that means is the community version will stop getting any updates. It might still get security updates. We haven't quite decided how that might work yet. It definitely won't get any feature changes at all. Enterprise customers will have the option of having long-term support from us for Camunda 7, again, for security and patch releases for a number of years after, as far as I'm aware. So that aspect is solid and decided. How the community version will look after, we're still working on that. We're not sure. We're going to do our best to make sure we don't leave anybody in a dodgy situation with 7, but we need to make sure that we have the people internally that are still ready to support C7 for community and how that might look. So yeah, cool, thank you. I'll take a question from here just now. Is it possible to create an element as an array within JSON using field? Yeah, absolutely, more like loops. It is. So that's a great question. Field is actually, that's from you again, Aaron, right? Yeah, that is, I'll show you where is a good place to do that. The first place is the field documentation. Let's just go into there, and then the field playground, which is my favorite place. So let's go into the reference and just show you the amount of stuff you can do in field. The loop thing is already here. Here's a field playground. If you're just getting started with field, or you want to just try something out for a prototype, you can paste your JSON object in here. You can type whatever field expression you want, and then have the result show up there. It's really, really handy. So in this, it's basically doing a loop here and creating a completely new object. So it's probably close to what you do, but it has a bunch of predefined functions that exist in field to make it even easier to use. Things like getting times and dates, things like, they're all listed here in the, let's see, where's my lovely field? Expressions. There we go. So let's go into, like, for instance, I don't know, there's a functions list. So we have contains. You can define your own functions, how error handling works, control flow stuff, as well as like quite complicated. So field can do a lot. That it really can. Okay, super. Hope that answers your question. In runtime, does it show which milestone I have surpassed? Yeah, you can check out which milestone. All the milestones are versioned, so you can always check that out. And you'll know because it's the milestones on deployment. I'm not sure if we keep the milestone. Actually, now that I think about it, I don't think we keep the milestone you're deployed to. Yeah. Oh, like a milestone, like one of like the BPMN element milestone. Oh yeah, sure. That's pretty easy. You can just drop that in here. Milestones are often used. The way I use it is for, let's say, Kafka event. As an example, this is an inbound connector. So this now will wait at this part of the process until a Kafka event on a certain topic is fired. Super handy. You can also have a bunch of other stuff in there if you want. But most events, of course, would be boundary events, like timers and stuff all still work. That sort of thing. So yeah, events, same as in C7. They basically work the same way. Okay. Yep.
So collaboration that happens with the development area.
Yep.
It's support multiple people accessing the same aspect.
Yes.
By lot.
Yeah, I can show you actually. Go and mess stuff up there.
Yes.
So I just added a bunch of stuff to Maria's model. So you'll see Maria's in the top right. She just joined the diagram. I see a little icon there. So now she's removing a bunch of stuff from it and adding some stuff, I guess.
As well, yeah. I can add.
It happens real time.
Yeah, it happens in real time. Yeah, yeah. It works like a Google Doc or similar. What do you do to that beautiful model, Maria? What has happened? So yeah, that's absolutely, yeah. I think it's one of those key things that analysts request, that it's very easy to work on the same model with multiple people. So we made it as easy as possible. Yeah, you can also control access to projects and what people have access to. So for instance, Maria very kindly made me an editor of the diagram. You can have just viewers, and you can also do a thing where if you want to very quickly show someone this model, you can create a link that's a read-only link that shows the latest version of the model to whoever you want it to. So there's the latest version of the model, and then you can just give it to them. That way, and actually we use this internally a lot. We've all of our processes are documented. So we would have a link like this embedded in Confluence, for instance, to show a certain process, which means that if the process changes, it updates all of the Confluence stuff. It's super handy. So we do use our own product a lot. Okay, more questions. So I think that one's good. How can you cover? I'll do my best to cover the license stuff. Do you know license stuff? Okay, great. That's good help. I don't know a lot of it right now because it changes a lot. But let me try and. I know it. I think it's on the website. Let's talk about the two different versions of it, right? So the on-prem versus the SaaS. So if I go to pricing here, I don't think this. I think it's pretty on point. There we go. Yeah. So to use the SaaS version, you can use it for free, of course, which will give you access to the modeler, DMN and stuff. But I think it's limited in other ways. You can't use process execution. You have a starter thing, which is $100 a month almost for building stuff, and then we have a custom price once you actually do that. It's based on the number of instances you start per month, as far as I remember.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Cool. They keep me away from all the sales stuff, just in case you're wondering. The other version is the on-prem version. So ZB is source available, but also open source. You can use that for free, and the engine itself, with one exception, which is you can't sell ZB as a service. Basically, you can't be a competitor to our cloud offering. This is what sometimes. Oh, you're right. Someone trying to kill Maria? Yeah. Pearl Maria is still suffering from Delhi. So the deployment, sort of the local installation has this exemption that means that essentially a big competitor can take our engine, put it in the cloud, and create their own version of Camunda SaaS. Beyond that, you can use ZB without any problems. Shouldn't for free if you want.
iOrg has created a platform based on Camunda 7.
Yeah.
And now looks like we might need to rethink. In that case, building a same platform for India organization for internal use using ZB should be fine.
No problem at all. I would check with your legal team because I'm not a lawyer or anything, but that's usually we want that use case to be perfectly reasonable. You should also know that some of the front end applications require a license to run them. So operate and optimize. They're independent things. That's not ZB, so they would require a license if you wanted to use them. But the engine itself, no problem. Okay, I think that's what I got for pricing because I don't really know much else. I'm afraid if I tell you something wrong, I'll be shouted at by somebody. So, this does happen. Can we upgrade the process version while running? Yeah, we can actually. Let me show you that because we actually already did. We're on version 3. So if I select this instance, you'll be able to see. You'll be able to see that I have multiple versions here. You can see that version 1 started off like this, and we can see the completed instance. Then we can see version 2, which was this one, and then we can see version 3. There we go, 17 instances. Nice. So yeah, the versioning it happens automatically as you deploy new process. Very similar to Camunda 7. Can we create a dynamic task in Camunda? You can using BPMN. Like you don't dynamic tasks can be created like this. Like if I want to create a task anytime I want, I can do something like this. There we go. So this is an event subprocess, my favorite symbol in BPMN, and this basically is like a global listener, right? And what I just modeled here, you know what I can show you with this? There we go. So what this does is, if we arrive here at our Space Traders thing, this is a message event, or it could be anything really, this event, and it's listening or at any point it may need to create an additional task for some reason. It could be based on a condition, based on an internal call, whatever you like, and then it'll trigger this and create it. In this case, it creates it without interrupting anything and be created any time you want, which is fine. Alternatively, you could also make this interrupting, which would then stop the process, stop anything that's running here and create a new one. But you don't need, I think BPMN can solve that problem. And it's better to solve with BPMN because it's visual. Everything should be visual. Creating a random task in a BPMN process or dynamic task, which we used to be possible in C7, creates an audit log nightmare. Better to have it modeled. And because it's possible and easy to model. Yeah, yes, of course. Yeah, absolutely, of course, yeah. Optimize captures everything, yeah. So optimize, don't forget, is being fed all of the events that happened in the engine. So unlike in Camunda 7, where you would get a chunk of stuff hitting the database all at once, every single thing that happens as it happens is being written to disk, then being exported to Elasticsearch.
Each time it
Say over time, sorry?
each time a dynamic task is triggered, an optimization is shown on separate box.
Yeah, you can see it in a separate instance as well if you want. It depends on how you want to design the model. In Optimize, you can add multiple models as data sources, like multiple processes, and then do reports on those at the same time to create one report. Okay. Is Optimize developed in-house by Camunda? Yes, everything is developed in-house by Camunda. I think. That's for you, is it?
Yeah. Actually, one more question with regards to that.
Yeah.
So if, let's say, an enterprise customer, they have their own analytics tool.
Yes.
And they want to use that
Happens all the time.
The analytics.
Yeah.
Is that possible?
I would say it's even common. Most people already have architectures built. They already have ways of reporting on what's happening across their infrastructure. And of course, you can use that. I think the difference is if you want reports on the context of your process, it's easier to do that and Optimize, and it's already there, so you might as well use it. But the data produced by the engine can be put into any system. And we have done that. Most reporting systems can use it. You can even just use Kibana against the Elasticsearch that gets produced if you wanted to just have a minimum effort reporting. Okay. Any other hands for questions right here? Yes, sir. Yeah. 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 Not yet. It'll probably won't be available till probably start of next year. But we already have the beginning of that feature. So I was still at Camunda when we developed that feature in Camunda, the migration to multiple processes. And I remember how we did it, which was we started off with did you redeploy this? Oh, great. Okay, let's just deploy this. And let's start an instance. My name is Maria. Yeah. I love you added validation of emails there.
No error.
Spanish for Maria. Let's start it and let's run to here. So the very, very first feature you need for that migration is the ability to move a token anywhere in the process from anywhere in the process. Because then you just need to work out, okay, well, if I change the definition, how would that work? So we already have that. So right here we have this activity, which as you can see, has the variable learn Morse code. Maria doesn't want to do that. So I'm just going to move this to here, apply that. So now it'll move the token back, re-execute that task and come back. So you can move tokens around the same instance. So the next logical step of this feature is be able to move tokens to a whole different process. So just to let you know where we're at with that, but it's definitely a key feature we want to add. Now Maria needs to play volleyball with some friends. Oh. Anyone want to play volleyball, Maria? Sorry, Maria, nothing good. Okay. Yeah, we got another, maybe one or two questions anymore. You can always talk to me afterwards, and Maria, of course. And of course, very important, Liv is still here. Liv is the person who is doing the developer, the research, UX research. Some of the questions I really liked about C7 and what you liked about it, if you want to make sure that, hey, you should prioritize that in C8, talk to Liv, and she'll poke somebody until they do that. So that's good. So once again, thank you very, very much. Thank you very much, Rachel, for organizing everything. Really appreciate it.
We want to really thank you because you've done a great job doing this. As you said, you've been only 3 months as a chapter leader.
Yeah.
So this is awesome. Also, thank you, LT Mindtree, for having us here as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And yeah, I'd like to pass it to stop sharing. Pass it to you.
Yep.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Neil, for the demos. And, we're all hands-on people, so we love looking at the code. It makes us, fulfilled, so to speak. And again, like Maria said, we just started this Bengaluru chapter 3 months ago. It was there for quite some time, but, we want to be active going forward. So if you have any feedback as to, what we can do next year, feel free to, share your feedback with me and also Maria.
There's gonna be a feedback survey sent around after this meeting. So be sure, as Rago said, add the topics that you would like to see. Maybe you want to present something. Let us know also what you thought of the session, because this is the best way that we can go back mainly to our boss and say, hey, keep sending us places in person to do these kind of things. Your feedback is really, really important. What you liked about the demos, the presentations, and of course to Rago to keep the community going.
Yeah, and 2 more things just to wrap up. So I've got some T-shirts, so all of you can have one. It's there in the box there for people in the auditorium. And also we have lunch upstairs, I think, first floor.
Yeah.
So 1 o'clock, we can all assemble for lunch. And again, thank you so much, for being here. And thanks LTM Mindtree, for arranging.